Hello, everyone. Got a few dirty jokes for you today.
So my wife went deer hunting for the first time. She said I go every year, and she wanted to see what was so great that I kept coming back to hunt year after year. I taught her how to operate and fire a rifle accurately, how to spot where deer frequented, how to use camouflage. By the time deer season arrived, I felt she was ready. I took her to her deer blind and told her if she shoots, stay put. I would hear her shoot then. I'd come from my blind 300 meters away and help her track her deer. No sooner was I out of sight, I heard her fire her rifle. I turned and headed her way. Before 10 seconds passed, I heard lots of yelling. I ran to her blind, and before long I could see a strange man with his hands up and my wife, rifle aimed, holding him in place. Running closer to them, I finally could hear that the man was desperately pleading with her. "Okay, lady, it's a deer. It's a deer. Just let me get my saddle off it, and I'll leave." So, two polar bears, a father and son, are walking around in the Arctic. The son looks at the father and says, "Dad, I've got a question. Are you sure I am 100% polar bear?" The father looks at his son and says, "Yes, son, you're 100% polar bear." "Okay," the son says. They keep walking, and about 20 minutes later, the son again says, "Are you sure I am 100% polar bear?" The father again says, "Yes, son, you're 100% polar bear." "Okay," says the son. About 30 minutes later, the son says, "Okay, Dad, be serious. Are you sure I am 100% polar bear? Are you sure there is no black bear or grizzly bear in me?" "Yes, son, you're 100% polar bear. I am 100% polar bear, and so is your mother. Why do you keep asking, son?" The son says, "Well, I don't know about you, but I am bloody freezing." So Harry and his wife are going through tough financial times, so they decide she should become a hooker to make some extra money. Uncertain about how to proceed, Harry advises her, stand in front of that bar and pick up a guy. Tell him it will cost $100. If you have any questions, I'll be parked around the corner. Barely 5 minutes later, a guy pulls up and asks, "How much?" She replies, $100. He responds, "I only have 30. She says, "Hold on a minute." She runs back to Harry and asks, "What can he get for $30? Harry replies, "A hand job." She hurries back and tells the guy that for $30, he can only get a hand job. He agrees, so she gets into the car. When he unzips his pants, out comes an enormous male member. She stares at it for a moment and then says, "I'll be right back." She rushes back around the corner and breathlessly asks Harry, "Harry, can you lend this guy $70? So, two frat boys were stranded at sea in a lifeboat. On the 4th day, a mermaid came up out of the water and offered them one wish to save their lives. The frat boys thought about it, and one shouted out, "I wish the ocean was a sea of beer." And it happened. A little while later, the other one shouted, "Great, now we have to pee in the boat." So a salesman was traveling through the countryside, selling insect repellent. He came to a farmhouse and tried his pitch on the farmer. "Sir, my bug spray is so good you will never be bitten again. I guarantee it." The farmer was dubious. "Young man, I'll make you a proposition. I'll tie you out in my cornfield buck naked, covered with that bug spray. If there is not a single bite on you come morning, I'll buy a whole case from you." The salesman was delighted. They went to the field and he stripped. The farmer sprayed him thoroughly with the bug spray and tied him to a stake. And back to the house went the farmer. The next morning, the farmer and his family trooped out to the cornfield. Sure enough, the salesman was there, hanging in his bonds, not a single bite on him. Yet he was a total wreck, pale, ghastly, haggard and drawn, but not one bite on him. The farmer was perplexed. "Son," he said, "now, you don't have a bite on you, but you look like hell. What the devil happened?" The salesman looked up through bloodshot eyes and croaked, "For crying out loud, mister, doesn't that calf have a mother?" So a woman with a small chest had tried everything to make her breasts grow larger, outside of plastic surgery, which she couldn't afford. Nothing seemed to work. One day, she ran into an old friend who commented about her beautiful appearance. The woman thanked her old friend, but mentioned how she's still very self-conscious about her small breasts. Her friend then asked if she'd heard of the witch doctor in the woods just outside of town. She said that he'd be able to help her with her problem with no surgery required. The next day, the woman woke up skeptical but figured she'd at least go speak to the witch doctor. She ventured out and finally found the hut in the woods that the doctor lived in. His name was Dr. Umbutu. The woman explained why she was there, and Doctor told her that he could certainly help. Dr. Umbutu then began rubbing and squeezing her breasts while chanting, "Scooby-Dooby Doobies, I want bigger boobies." He repeated the chant 3 times, and amazingly, the woman's breasts immediately grew an entire size larger. The woman was amazed and incredibly happy. She thanked Dr. Umbutu and began to leave when he stopped her and gave her one warning. He told her that she must perform the same ritual of squeezing her breasts and repeating the same chant 3 times every morning, or the spell will be broken and her breasts will shrink down to the original size. She said she understood and went on her way. For the next several months, every morning the woman awoke, and the first thing she did was the ritual. She began to feel more confident and really enjoyed the extra attention she started to receive from men and the compliments she would get from other women on how exquisite her breasts looked. However, one morning the woman overslept. She frantically jumped up and got dressed and out the door just in time to catch the bus to work. As she sat down in her seat, she sighed with relief, knowing she wouldn't be late that morning. All of a sudden, panic stretched across the woman's face as she realized that she'd forgotten to perform the ritual before she left. Morning was almost over, so she made the decision to perform the ritual right there in front of a bus full of other people. She stood up and grabbed her breasts and chanted "Scooby-Dooby Doobies, I want bigger boobies. Scooby-Dooby Doobies, I want bigger boobies." She then said it a 3rd time as the entire bus full of people stared at her in confusion, some chuckling to themselves. She completed the chants and sat back down in her seat, her face flush with embarrassment. Just then, a handsome man sitting behind her leaned up and asked, "Excuse me, ma'am, do you happen to be a patient of Dr. Umbutu?" The woman, now even more uncomfortable, said, "Why, yes, I am." "How on earth did you know that?" Just then, the man leaned in a bit closer, winked at her, and whispered in her ear, "Hickory dickory dock." So a man has been at the pub all night drinking. The bartender finally says that the bar is closed. So our man stands up to leave and falls flat on his face. He figures he'll crawl outside and get some fresh air and maybe that will sober him up. Once outside, he stands up but again falls flat on his face. He crawls home. Reaching the door, he tries to stand up and yet again falls flat on his face. He crawls through the door and up the stairs. When he reaches his bed, he summons the last of his strength and tries one final time to stand. It's no use. He tumbles into bed and is soon sound asleep, only to awaken the next morning to the sound of his wife standing over him shouting, "So, you've been out drinking again. How did you know?" he asks, his head hung in shame. "The pub called. You left your damn wheelchair down there again." So a man who had too much to drink decides to walk home on New Year's Eve. A policeman stopped the man and asked where he was going. "I'm on my way to a lecture," the man replied. The cop scoffed. "Who gives lectures on New Year's Eve?" The man answered, "My wife." So a young man graduated from University of Tasmania with a degree in journalism. His first assignment for the newspaper who hired him was to write a human interest story. Being from Tassie, he went back to the bush to do his research. He went to an old farmer's house, way back in the hills, introduced himself to the farmer, and proceeded to explain to him why he was there. The young man asked, "Has anything ever happened around here that made you happy?" The farmer thought for a minute and said, "Yep. One time, one of my neighbor's sheep got lost. We formed a search party and found it. We all rooted it and took it back home." "I can't print that," the young man exclaimed. "Can you think of anything else that happened that made you or a lot of other people happy?" After another moment, the farmer said, "Yeah. One time my neighbor's daughter, a good-looking girl, got lost. We formed a big search party that time and found her. After we all rooted her, we took her back home too." Again, the young man said, "I can't print that either." "Has anything ever happened around here that made you sad?" The old farmer dropped his head, looked up timidly at the young man and said, "I got lost once." So a salesman drove into a small town where a circus was playing. A sign read, "Don't miss the amazing Italian." The salesman bought a ticket and sat down. There, under the big top, in the center ring, was a table with 3 walnuts on it. Standing next to it was an old Italian. Suddenly, the old man dropped his pants, whipped out his huge male member, and smashed all the walnuts with 3 mighty swings. The crowd erupted in applause, and the elderly Italian was carried off on their shoulders. 15 years later, the salesman visited the same little town, found the same circus, and saw the same faded sign that read, "Don't miss the amazing Italian." He couldn't believe the old guy was still alive, much less still doing his act. He bought a ticket. Again, the center ring was illuminated. This time, however, instead of walnuts, 3 coconuts were placed on the table. The Italian stood before them, then suddenly dropped his pants and smashed the coconuts with 3 swings of his amazing member. The crowd went wild. Flabbergasted, the salesman requested a meeting with him after the show. "You're incredible," he told the Italian, "but I have to know something. I saw your act 15 years ago, and you were using walnuts. Why the switch from walnuts to coconuts?" "Well," said the Italian, "my eyes aren't what they used to be." So this guy was watching TV as his wife was out cutting the grass during the hot summer. He finally worked up the energy to go out and ask his wife what was for dinner. Well, his missus was quite irritated about him sitting in the air-conditioned house all day while she did all the work, so she scolded him. "I can't believe you're asking me about dinner right now. Imagine I'm out of town. Go inside and figure dinner out yourself." So he went back in the house and fixed himself a big steak with potatoes, garlic bread, and tall glass of beer. The wife finally walked in about the time he was finishing up and asked him, "You fixed something to eat?" "So where is mine?" "What do you mean?" replied the husband. "I thought you were out of town." So a lady walks into a store and asks where the XL rubbers are. The manager sends her off to the family planning section. After 10 minutes, the manager takes routine a walk around the store to check on things. He finds the lady still in the family planning section, humming to herself, just looking around. The manager goes up to her. "Hello, did you find the rubbers?" "Oh, yeah," says the lady, pointing in the direction of the rubbers and then goes back to humming. The manager is confused. Is there anything else I can help you with?" "Oh, no," the lady said. "I'm just waiting to see who buys them." So an old boy was relaxing on his 100th birthday when a reporter asked him a few questions. "Sir, what's the secret of your long life?" The man considered this for a moment, then replied, "Every day I have a glass of port. Good for the heart, I've heard." "Is that all?" asked the reporter. "Well," replied the old man, "getting out of Hiroshima was a good call too." So a man goes on an extended vacation and leaves his cat with his brother for safekeeping. When he arrives at his destination and settles in, he gives his brother a call and asks, "How's the cat?" "The cat is dead," replies the brother. "How could you be so insensitive?" says the man. "I just arrived at my resort, and you tell me my cat is dead. You could have told me everything is fine, and I would have been unaware. A few days later, I would have called, and you could have said, 'We've had an incident, and the cat is on the roof. But we're sure things will be all right.' And I would have been concerned, but not alarmed. A few days after that, when I checked in, you could have said, 'We got the cat down and he's had a minor injury, and he is at the vet, but it's nothing to worry about.' I would have been concerned, but it wouldn't have ruined the rest of my trip. Then, right before I'm about to come home and I checked in, you could have told me the cat has taken a turn for the worse, but the vet is still optimistic. Then I would have been prepared. Do you see what I mean?" The brother replies, "I'm so sorry. I hadn't thought of it like that. I'll try to be more considerate in the future." The man says, "It's okay. I loved that cat, but I think I'll be okay. So how's Mom?" The brother took a long pause and said, "She's on the roof." So I saw a woman about to park outside my house, and I said, "You can't park there, love." She said, "Sorry, I'll move it over there." I said, "You can't park there either." She asked, "Why the hell not?" I replied, "Because you're a woman." So one day the husband notices that their 6th kid, Billy, looks very different from the other 7. The husband goes to his wife and asks her, "Honey, I noticed that Billy looks different from the other children. Did you have an affair?" The wife starts to break down into tears and nods her head. The husband, heartbroken, quietly asks his wife, "So who is Billy's father?" The wife wiped her tears and replied, "You." So there was a man and a woman screwing in the middle of a dark forest. After about 15 minutes, the man finally gets up and says, "Damn, I wish I had a flashlight." The woman says, "Me too, you've been eating grass for the past 10 minutes. So in ancient Japan, dragons were symbols of wealth and power. These would be embroidered on the breast of their kimonos. One day, three girls were talking when one says, "When I marry, I'm going to marry a man with one dragon on his breast." The second one says, "I'm going to marry a man with two dragons on his breast." The third one says, "I want to marry a man with one dragon on the floor." So a farmer drove over to his neighbor's house and knocked on the door. A boy, about 9, opened the door. "Is your mom or dad home?" The farmer asked the boy. "No, they went into town." The boy replied. "Well, how about your brother Howard?" The farmer asked. "No, he went with mom and dad," the boy said. The farmer stood there for a minute, shifting from one foot to another and mumbling when the boy says, "I know where the tools are if you need to borrow one, or I could give my dad a message for you." "Well," the farmer said uncomfortably, "I wanted to talk to your dad about your brother Howard getting my daughter pregnant." The boy thought for a moment, then said, "You'll have to talk to my dad about that. I know he charges $500 for the bulls and $150 for the pigs, but I have no idea how much he charges for Howard." So a turkey was chatting with a bull. "I would love to be able to get to the top of that tree," sighed the turkey, "but I haven't got the energy." "Well, why don't you nibble on my droppings?" replied the bull. "They're packed with nutrients." The turkey pecked at a lump of dung and found that it gave him enough strength to reach the lowest branch of the tree. The next day, after eating some more dung, he reached the second branch. Finally, after a fourth night, there he was proudly perched at the top of the tree. Soon he was spotted by a farmer who shot the turkey out of the tree. Moral of the story? Bullshit might get you to the top, but it won't keep you there.